Fish on. What is up, guys? I am doing some crib fishing today, and cribs are one of the most underrated places to catch fish in northern Wisconsin especially. There's so many fish down there right now, I can't even tell you. Oh yeah, nice walleye, really nice walleye. Wow. Oh, I gotta get the net, guys. Dude, this is why cribs are so incredible. I'm gonna tell you guys exactly how I fish these all summer long, how I catch crappies, how I catch bluegills and walleyes. Like that. Look at that fish, you guys. What a hog. Can't even fit him on the screen right now, but just a leech on a slip bobber on a crib, and bam, nice fish. We're gonna let this fish go. He's a little too big to keep, but man, what a start to a good day crib fishing. That was not planned at all. I had just dropped down on this crib to see what I could catch right here, and I had the camera rolling luckily, but that gives you a little bit of an idea what can happen when you pull up on a crib that's loaded with fish. So hopefully we're able to catch a bunch more here. I know there's more fish on there. I've got my live scope set up and I can see them down there swimming around. So I'm pretty confident we're gonna catch more fish here, but I want to kind of explain what a crib is before we get into how actually to fish these cribs. And up here in northern Wisconsin, there's a lot of lakes that have sunken structure. That's man-made structure. So a crib is basically anything that's been placed on the lake bottom by humans for fish cover. And it can consist of logs, brush, concrete, plastic, and fish relate to each one a little bit differently and at different times of year. Crib fishing is really not about finding any crib, it's about finding the cribs that have fish on them. And to do that, you do need good sonar. These cribs are typically not super shallow. Sometimes you can see them on a calm day, but typically you're looking for these on electronics. Live scope certainly makes this much easier, but 2D sonar works as well, and you can certainly fish them that way. But if you have some sort of live sonar, it really makes crib fishing super, super fun and easy. And that's what I'm gonna be using today. You know, anywhere from 10 to 30 feet of water may have cribs that hold fish at certain times of year. This is kind of typically a summer pattern for me. I do really well on cribs in the summertime, and then again late in the fall and even through the winter ice fishing. But right now we're concentrating on a summer pattern for panfish, walleyes, and bass. And those are typically fish that you're gonna find on cribs. Lots and lots of bluegills oftentimes, sometimes the biggest bluegills in the lake. So that's kind of an overview of what these cribs are. And how you find them is basically you cruise around with side imaging. That's the best way to find these, over flats and off of drop-offs. And you just cruise around looking for those blobs on the side imaging, and then you mark them, come back over them, and you can anchor just upwind of them and fish them. So that's what I'm doing right now. As you can see on here, I've got actually 3 cribs kind of stacked up in a row about 15 feet to my left. So we're gonna start here by fishing this with a slip bobber rig, and this is a really good way to fish these cribs for just about everything. And the way I set my slip bobber rig up is to drop pretty fast. I don't want to necessarily have a bait that's going to blow around a lot because I'm fishing a very specific spot. So I want this to sink real fast. So I got a pretty good sized float on here, and then I've got an 1/8 ounce sliding weight to my swivel. Then I've got another split shot about 12 inches down, and then I've got a tungsten jig. I think that's a 32nd ounce tungsten jig on the bottom of that. So I got a fair amount of weight on there because when I drop it, I want it to go straight down because I know exactly where it's going to be in relation to the crib. All right, guys, there's one of the best big bluegill baits ever right there, and that's a small leech, just the smallest ones you can get. And when I'm fishing bluegills on these cribs, I'm going to target the top of the crib. So I'm going to suspend this bait just over the top. You'll often see it like right now, there's a school of bluegills just hanging over the top of the structure. They're not towards the bottom, towards the base of it. They're actually way up high. And so you don't want to drop it down past them. You want to get it right above their heads in that school. So here's a real nice one. And these are the quality of bluegills you'll often find out here on these cribs. Some of the nicest fish in the lake. This is a real nice, like 8-inch eater sized bluegill right here. But they are very, very commonly associating around these cribs in large numbers and usually good fish. Another gorgeous gill there on the leech. Can't beat these things for a fish fry. All right, another way to catch these suspended bluegills over the top of these cribs is to use a piece of night crawler on like a 16th or 32nd ounce tungsten jig. And I'm just gonna let it fall right next to the boat. I can actually watch it on my live scope. I can see it going down here. Here comes a fish. I'm gonna stop it right above him. Just wiggle it a little bit, wait for the bite, and bam, fish on, just like that. It's a super fun way to fish because you can actually visually interact with these fish. And yeah, another nice, fatty, beautiful northern Wisconsin bluegill right there. Vertical jigging over the top of this crib. Look how wide that fish is. Thing's got an absolute gut on it. And when I'm doing this, let me put him in the live well here. When I'm doing this, I don't want to use a huge piece of night crawler because what's going to happen is they're going to just come up and pick it off. So I'll even use, like, let's say here's a whole crawler. Instead of pinching it in half, I'm going to pinch it literally in quarters. And when I get that crawler pinched off, I'm actually going to thread it about 4-5 times onto that hook. So there's just a little tiny tag end hanging off. And that keeps them from picking it off so easily. And again, we're just going to drop it down here. Watch it go down. There we go. There we go. Another nice gill. Really pretty fish. Just chomped that half a crawler on the jig head. Exactly what we're looking for right there. To make a nice meal here. Works really well. It's fun to catch them that way too. Just feeling that bite right below the boat. Put him in the live well. There's one. Just like that. Feels like a good one too. Oh yeah. Nice chunker. Another nice chunky fish fry bluegill right there. That's exactly what we're looking for. So you guys, I've got my live scope transducer set up on a Brew City Outdoors mount here. This one's been really good for me. It swivels really nice. It's got an extendable handle. You can point it up, you can point it down, and that's really how I control where my live scope transducer is facing. It's worked really well. It mounts to the boat here with just a swivel mount. I can swing it up and out of the way real quick and deploy it really quick. So it's been an excellent little mount for me so far. All right guys, another great way to catch these bluegills if they're more towards the bottom of the crib is a drop shot rig. And I'm gonna set this with a number 6 hook, a leech, and about an 18-inch leader. And this will certainly catch walleyes too. I like to use this method more when there's fewer panfish around and more of a chance for bigger game fish. If you use this method when there's a lot of bluegills around, you're most likely going to get picked off too quickly. And oftentimes it's a great way to have a multi-species presentation. You can catch walleyes on this rig, you can catch smallmouth on this rig, and certainly panfish as well. But it's great when the bluegills are more trained to bottom and they're not hovering over the tops of those cribs as much. There's a bite. That's a good fish. That's definitely not a bluegill. Not a bluegill. This might be either a walleye or a smallie. There we go. Like I said, these drop shot rigs are a great multi-species tactic here, and this will catch just about anything on these cribs. And if there's not too many bluegills picking you off, this is a great way to present a live bait around a crib, or a plastic for that matter. All right guys, well, it's slowing down. I've caught quite a few fish, but the good news is I've only fished one crib so far. So we're gonna go move to another one. I've got a whole string of them here, and oftentimes that's what you're gonna find in these lakes where they drop kind of lines of them in a row, and you just have to work your way down the line and check them. If they got fish on them, fish them. If they look pretty empty, maybe drop once or twice. And if you don't get bit, move to the next one. And there's new excitement on every crib. So we're gonna go Now that I've shown you how to catch some bluegills, we're gonna go and try and catch some walleyes off this next one, and I'll show you how I kind of approach the walleyes on these cribs. All right guys, for walleyes, one of the best ways to catch them is definitely a slip bobber rig, just like I was using at first there. Same exact rig. The difference is I'm gonna use a big old chunky leech, the biggest one I can get. I'm gonna back off the crib a little bit more, so I'm gonna see it on my live scope, but I'm not gonna be right over it because I don't want to spook these fish. You can catch them when you're right up to it, but I find it's better to kind of sneak in on them. And I'm gonna make a pitch just to the edge of that crib, and I want this closer to the bottom than I had it with the bluegills. And I want to fish off the sides of the crib, not necessarily over the top of the crib. There's one. There's one. This may actually be the target species. Can't tell yet. Could be a bass too. Definitely not a bluegill. So oftentimes what happens when you get that bait down towards the bottom next to the crib, you're gonna get a bigger fish. What do we have here? Now it is a bass, I think. That's why I love fishing these cribs. You just never know what's gonna be hanging around down there. This may be another species. This might be a largemouth here. Yep, Mr. Largy. There we go. Not a bad one either. Good fight. Smoked that leech right next to the crib, and you could certainly catch this fish on a drop shot rig if you were tournament fishing too. We've done really well tournament fishing for largemouth on cribs like this using finesse rigs, drop shots, Ned rigs, that kind of thing. If I'm fishing a tournament for bass and I'm fishing artificials only, it's gonna be probably a drop shot like this or a Ned rig. Something finessey that those bass are gonna wanna eat. They get pressured on these cribs, so you do wanna use something a little more finessey. And I like a 4-inch drop shot worm of some sort. This is a Billy Rub hot shot in Morning Dawn. And that's probably my favorite go-to for walleyes and bass, both when I'm using plastics. When I'm using plastics for walleyes on a crib, it's typically when the panfish are too bad and I can't get a bait past the little panfish. They're just picking it apart. That's when I'll use a plastic for walleyes. And I've caught a lot of walleyes on plastics on drop shot rigs around cribs. It works really, really well, so especially in low light conditions. Now, sometimes when the walleyes aren't biting as well, I'll put something like a leech or a crawler on there and drop that down there. And one thing you have to be a little more careful of with the drop shot rig is you don't want to get tangled up in the crib. So you want to fish along the edges of the crib rather than right on top of it. So those fish are hanging around, and oftentimes, like I said, the walleyes will be hanging right off the edge of that structure next to it rather than on top of it. So getting that drop shot right along next to the crib up towards the base of it is a perfect way to get a bait to those fish. All right guys, since I wasn't able to get any walleyes on that particular lake after I caught that big one, I decided I'd film another section here on a different lake. And I've spotted a bunch of walleyes here, not very far from this crib. They're kind of hanging just off the edge of it, and they're suspended about 4 or 5 feet off the bottom. I just dropped my leech about 4 feet off the bottom here. It's dangling there over their heads, which is where you want it. And we should get one to come up and look at it here. Yeah, here comes a couple of them right now. A couple of them. You gonna eat it, buddy? Oh, they're staring it down. They're staring it down. There he goes. He got it. Got him. So cool, and you can see them like that on the live scope. And I knew exactly what it was. Nice. That is almost a 15-incher, I'm guessing. Maybe a hair small, but that's how you do it right there. And you can tell they're walleyes by the shape of their bodies on the sonar. You know, they have those long cylindrical bodies. They're much different than a bluegill, which will be much more round on the live scope. So, all right guys, there's actually a very large school of walleyes back here just behind my boat. This should actually not take very long at all. There's probably 30, 40 walleyes back here, I'm guessing. Yep, mere seconds. Wow, that was pretty sweet. I mean, I can see a pile of walleyes back there, you guys. Just a pile. This one's a little bit nicer. Oh yeah, that's more like it. There we go. There you have it, guys, on the slip bobber. Just set up here off this crib, and I can see a pack of walleyes. They're just sitting off to the edge here, and they're suspended like 3 or 4 feet off the bottom. And there is a whole bunch of them. All right, guys, we're on a different lake here, fishing same type of structure, fishing a crib. And this time I'm gonna try this little Eurotackle B-Vibe plastic. We got some crappies on this crib, so hopefully one of them will come up and whack it here. There we go. That didn't take long. Oh yeah. There we go. Swim baits are actually really good for vertical fishing as long as you can fish them fairly fast. And I'm fishing these on like a 1/8 ounce jig head, 1/16 ounce jig head, so they fall pretty fast, and they definitely do the trick on these crappies. So when I'm fishing crappies on a crib, I like to anchor with the stern or wherever I'm fishing directly off the edge of the crib, and I can do that with my live scope again. That's the best position to be because I can pretty much fish vertically and I can see everything that's going on down there. Like right now I can see my bait dropping right next to the side of the crib. I see a fish coming up to it. He backed off, so I'm going to drop it down again now. And out comes one. Out comes one. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Oh, they're chasing it. Oh, come on. There he is. And I can literally just watch these fish chase it around. And it is so fun to do on live scope around these cribs. Another not bad crappie at all here. And it just becomes a game of cat and mouse with that jig. Kind of watching their reaction, seeing what they want, and kind of tailoring your retrieve to that. But let's see if we can get another one here. But these crappies oftentimes are very, very reluctant to leave the structure or whatever structure they're in. And if you can drop right next to it, a lot of times that's really the key to getting bit. There he is. Hit it on the drop. Another nice one. Look at that. They're all pretty cookie cutter, like 10, 11 inches. Not bad fish. Super fun to catch them this way on a crib. And these crappies just absolutely love wood cover. It's one of their favorite structures to hang around, and they're certainly packed on this one today. Well guys, hopefully that gives you some insight on how to fish these cribs. We got a lot of lakes that have cribs on them up here in northern Wisconsin and Minnesota as well, so I'm sure you'll be able to find some. If you want to watch another video, I'll leave another one right here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We'll catch you next time. Get hooked up.